Mr. Sias, the first priority on your website is to fight inflation. The state treasurer manages money. How does the state treasurer fight inflation?
Well, the state treasurer, first of all, I'm running to be a champion for our taxpayers because the cost of living in Colorado has gone up so much. Now, what I can do as the treasurer and ways in which I will do things differently than the current treasurer, first of all, I'll manage the treasurer's office in an efficient manner. The current treasurer has increased the size of the manning there by almost 50% in 3 years. I think we can do better. Second of all, I'll serve as a strong and independent voice in our public pension system, which, as you know, is a serious liability for our state. And third of all, I will use the bully pulpit of this office to argue for cost-benefit analysis of the legislation that we pass, because the regulations we're passing have driven up costs on Colorado taxpayers. Second, for looking at how we spend our money and the results that we get, and third, to stand up for our right to vote on tax increases and tax refunds.
I need to ask about the first point you made there. Did you say the manpower in his office? That
yes.
He has increased employees in his office, and that has led to statewide inflation?
What that does is any time that the state is reaching further into hardworking taxpayers' wallets and family budgets to increase the size of the government, that's taking money out of their pockets, and it's driving up the cost of living in our state.
Thank you, Mr. Sias. Mr. Young, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Denver's metro area inflation is now 7.7%. This time last year, 4.5%. Why shouldn't that be a reflection of your work as state treasurer?
Well, prices are going up everywhere. This is a global situation. We've seen the pandemic and the economic downturn, supply chain issues. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't pay attention to it. Certainly during the economic downturn, I started a Climber small business loan program to address the needs of small businesses here in the state of Colorado. My belief is that when businesses are competitive, then they can actually drive down price. It is a market force, and small businesses are overrepresented in our economy. So this attention to small businesses is important.
I want to ask, because Mr. Sias brought it up, because you hired more people in your office, did that cause a higher inflation rate?
No, it didn't. What had happened is we have a great staff. We actually have a great staff in the Treasury, but they were pretty heavily under-resourced and overworked when I got in there from the previous treasurer, Walker Stapleton. For example, we only had 3 investment officers for $20 billion and needed to really make sure, because the number one job of the treasurer is to make sure the taxpayer dollars are safe. We've added some programs from the legislature that have added staff. This is by legislative edict, so we respond to that when we were asked to increase staff.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Mr. Sias, I saw you raise your finger.
Well, Colorado leads the nation in rate of inflation. Every Colorado family is now paying over $950 more every single month than they were at the beginning of last year, just to try and keep up. And that has all happened under single-party rule in this state.
If I understood that right, we're at 7.7%, and nationwide we're at 7.9%. So how does Colorado rank number one in the nation?
If you look back to January of 2021, Coloradans, the dollar cost of inflation, it's up at over 15% since that time. And Coloradans are paying more cumulatively for transportation, energy, food, and housing. That is number one in the nation.
So 15%. I'm looking at a 7.7% rate from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Where is this 15%?
That is coming from the Joint Economic Committee of the United States Senate, and I will be happy to give you the numbers.
So if you were state treasurer, would you be using numbers from a partisan source to make decisions versus what we're seeing from U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics and from nonpartisan legislative council staff?
Those statistics don't disagree, and as I said, those are generated by the Joint Economic Committee of the U.S. Senate. And Colorado is number one. And what we need to do in this state is take a look at how much money we're taking from our taxpayers and how much money we're spending. Our state budget, as I think you all are aware, has gone up by over 25%. I believe it's 28% exactly in the last 4 years. We've had over 1,000 new employees that we've hired statewide, and it's been widely reported that we are on an unsustainable path with creating 12 new offices in our departments. I'll let you go ahead and finish, but there has just been tremendous growth of government with no check and balance.
One final word on this topic, Mr. Young.
Well, you know, it's controversial, but in fact, we actually did issue TABOR refunds to every taxpayer here in the state of Colorado. I know that there was some criticism on that, but we understood that prices were going up, and so we returned that money earlier to taxpayers than would have been under Republican rule. You know, most of the people have already received that $750 checks, $1,500 joint filer. We moved it also in a way that actually benefited more people. The current tax refund mechanism that my opponent likes benefits the very wealthy, and average taxpayers don't get that much. So we've made some efforts to try to deal with inflation that way. I will say his numbers are creative on the budget. I want to remind you that in 2020 there was a 22% cut in the general fund. I don't know what he's talking about for numbers, if he's talking about total budget. I was a member of the Joint Budget Committee. I know the budget numbers pretty well.
Thank you, Mr. Young. And that's a topic TABOR we'll get to momentarily.
I'm sure we will.